I sold myself to a monster. I was able to meet the delivery creature that hauled over clothing and cleaning supplies. He had a human body but a bat face covered in soft brown fur. A set of large ears gave him extra height with a black cap sat snuggled between them. He wore a long black cape that reached his feet. Piles of boxes were at his feet by the time I reached the main door. I didn't know how someone as thin as him could carry so much stuff, let alone fly with them. He helped me bring the boxes inside. His arms were large wings hidden under his cloak. Large claws had no issue handling the stacks of boxes. Thank you for the help. Sorry to make you carry all this, I said looking over the piles. Easy peasy. He smiled with a set of large teeth. He was friendly, but his teeth were deadly. Since the woods around the mansion were so dense it was impossible to get food and other supplies to the mansion without using the flying delivery bats. I didn't expect so much stuff to arrive at once. I'm Arvin. I'll try not to order this much next time, I said, and we shook hands. His clawed hand felt odd, but it was not a bad feeling. He was starting to grow on me. I'm Nacho, not Bruce, I commented without considering he might not understand the reference. I don't want to deal with lawyers, he joked with another wide smile. Nacho reached inside his cloak to pull out a small black notebook with a pen. It was a bit weird seeing someone not entirely human holding a normal set of items. You're human, correct? May I ask you a small favor with an odd hobby of mine? I was about to agree right away before realizing I could be walking into anything. Depending, I said with a raised eyebrow. Since I fly around a lot for work, I meet a great deal of different species. My goal is to kiss all of them at least once, he explained, sharp teeth shining. Oh, yeah, I don't mind. I shrugged. I've never been overly interested in dating guys, but then again, I hadn't been overly interested in anyone. Any relationships I got into soon crumbled. I considered dating outside my comfort zone and yet never got around to it. Nacho's gender didn't bother me. Only his teeth made me nervous. His ears perked up in excitement. He quickly made a note and closed his book. For a moment I got a little bit nervous. It had been a long while since anyone was this close. It was a quick action without a hint of interest. I expected something a bit more intimate. I almost felt used afterward. Nacho let out a small squeaking noise as he made more notes. He was more excited filling out his notebook than getting a little bit of action. You don't have rabies, right? I half joked. He wasn't human. He might be carrying anything. That's insensitive and a bit racist. Nacho replied, however, didn't sound offended. What are you boys doing? Tolka arrived to see what had been taking me so long. She greeted Nacho and they introduced each other. What kind of species are you? Nacho asked her while still holding his notebook. That's insensitive and a bit racist, Tolka responded. She must have heard the previous conversation and wanted to make a joke. She agreed to let him add her species to his notebook. I suddenly felt a bit protective of her and didn't want to watch them kiss in front of me. Tolka held out her hand to let Nacho kiss the back of it. I didn't know that was an option and wondered why Nacho didn't suggest that for our interaction. I considered that even though Tolka appeared like an adult, she might not be fully grown just yet. Nacho asked Tolka if she would help him with his small hobby. I frowned, making my discomfort known. She held out her hand and Nacho took it to place a kiss on the back of it. He scribbled down some notes while making small squeaking noises. Do you want to stay for breakfast? Tolka offered. Nacho nodded. He followed us as we walked down the stone steps to the small kitchen. It was dark, but we still sat at the old wooden table as Tolka started to cook. We carried down some boxes of supplies that she looked through to see what Nacho brought. It was a mixture of processed food and fresh supplies. Tolka wanted to try something different. Soon she placed bowls in front of us after making a few pieces of toast. I wonder if Duke will ever come down for a meal, I asked, mostly to myself. He doesn't seem to be the type to spend time with others. Tolka commented. I don't know much about him aside from rumors. Nacho shrugged. He stirred at the bowl, curious over what the new food might be. The box said this is cream of wheat. I've never had it, Tolka said, waiting for me to eat first before trying her breakfast. I added a little bit of brown sugar and took a spoonful. It was too hot, so I needed to wait another few minutes before eating. Nacho blew on his spoonful and took a bite. A strange expression came over his face. He reached over to slide over the brown sugar jar. He added 5 scoops before Tolka said anything. "You're adding a lot of sugar," she said with a raised eyebrow. "I'm aware," he replied. "I wonder if Duke is going to buy more people to live here. I wouldn't mind, but I'm not comfortable supporting that place. It feels like it motivates them to exploit others," I said with a sigh. "The auction doesn't force anyone to sell themselves. They share half the profits, and they're upfront about who might buy us. Weaker people like us always have the risk of abuse. We might as well be able to control when it happens and get something out of it," Tolka explained. My stomach felt odd at her words. I didn't like how she saw her life and how easy it was to sell herself. She took a bite of her breakfast and then paused. She reached over and took the brown sugar from Nacho. Instead of scooping, she started to pour it directly into the bowl. "You're adding a lot of sugar," I pointed out. "I'm aware," she replied. Soon her bowl was more wet sugar than cream of wheat. "We need more firewood. Our rooms and water are heated by fire. I also need wood for cooking. So, we go through a lot of it. I'll pack us lunch if you want to go out and collect some with me today," Tolka explained. Nacho had finished his breakfast. He took his bowl to the sink to rinse it out. He needed to get back to work. Tolka offered to make him a lunch to take with him. I found a jacket and put a water bottle inside the pocket. Tolka wrapped herself in a poncho-like blanket as we walked Nacho to the front door. She found large baskets with straps we could use to carry on our backs. Nacho thanked us for taking the time with him. I think he just didn't want to get back to work. He took his cap off and tucked it under his black cape. His form changed slightly. With a final goodbye, he kicked off the ground so hard I swear it broke the sound barrier. Dirt and leaves kicked up after he shot into the sky, his cape forming into large wings. I blinked once and he disappeared. After talking to him I had forgotten he wasn't human until that second. Tolka wasn't surprised at all. She just started to walk down the forest pathway a few feet into the forest. I had yet to see the mansion from the outside. The sky was overcast with dark clouds. The mansion looked more like a castle with countless windows and towers reaching far off into the sky. I would take an army to actually clean this place. Duke probably just gave me a meaningless job to keep me busy. We didn't need to walk far to find firewood. At one point there had been a brick road leading to Duke's mansion. Over time the forest crept over it. Tolka placed larger logs into her basket. She let me toss smaller sticks into mine. I think she expected to be out here until lunchtime. However, after a few minutes, we almost had a full basket. "We'll do a few trips. Unload these in the main hallway and then keep gathering more wood. It's better to get it all done in a day. Winter is coming soon. We can't be stuck without warmth," she explained. That made sense. This appeared like it would be a long day even before the trouble started. We had gathered 2 baskets when I paused to take a short break. My back started to hurt from bending over so much. The ground was damp and muddy. It hadn't fully dried yet from the rain. My eyes landed on a pair of tracks in the mud near the buried pathway. I hadn't seen any animals out in the forest, but there must be some. Instead of a paw print, I was staring at tracks left by a human foot. Who was walking out here in their bare feet? I turned to ask Tolka only to have panic rise into my throat. I didn't see her. I frantically turned my head in all directions praying I would find her. I only found a hard fist to my face that knocked me off my feet. A second hit of some sort of blunt weapon knocked the daylights out of me. Hours later my senses returned. I was on my stomach with my hands tied behind my back. A dull pain throbbed through my brain. Slowly I sat up to see a large campfire. Small shelters had been built out of leaves and animal skins around the fire. Thankfully Tolka sat beside me appearing unharmed. A set of paws stopped in front of us. I saw the large wolf's legs first. Looking up I expected something not human, but I never would have imagined the creature in front of us existed until I saw it. It had the body of a large gray wolf. Where the head should have been was the entire upper half of the body. It was covered with a large beaded blanket, but the torso appeared human, only covered in fur. The face was dog-like, too slim to be a wolf. It had bushy long hair down up in braids. A dogtaur, I muttered to myself. It was sorta like a centaur. Instead of a horse body, it was a wolf. And instead of a human body, it had a werewolf torso? Tolka raised her eyebrow at my words, wondering if I got brain damage. It was sorta like a centaur. Instead of a horse body, it was a wolf. And instead of a human body, it had a werewolf torso? Tolka raised her eyebrow at my words, wondering if I got brain damage. What are you to the Duke? The wolf asked in a husky female voice. I felt a blush came over my face. I wasn't aware I liked taller women, even if they weren't human. Tolka had her hands tied as well, but she nudged my shoulder hard with her own. Nothing. He just bought us on a whim. I admitted. There were more of the odd werewolf creatures moving around the small campsite. From the looks of things, the one in front of us was their leader. If you are still living in his space, then he may still be interested in you. We shall keep you here until he arrives to retrieve you, the wolf said with crossed arms. You don't need to do that. I can go back to the mansion and find Duke if you want something from him, I said, trying to get out of here. So far, they hadn't really harmed us. But it was getting cold out and I wasn't wearing a good enough jacket. He shall come to us, she said with her tone growing harsher. The Duke brought our entire tribe here and then forgot about us. It is such an insult to our kind. We cannot be insulted further by someone reminding him of us. I didn't blame her for being upset. Duke didn't even tell us why he bought Tolka. We could only guess. I wonder how long this wolf and her tribe stayed in this forest completely forgotten about. They could have come to the mansion at any point. They must have seen us outside and grabbed us on a whim. I didn't want to stay out here for too long. I knew Duke wouldn't notice us missing no longer how long we were kidnapped. He would either forget about us or assume we simply left. Take away these two, she said to a pair of wolves. They easily picked us off the ground. They let Tolka sit on a wolf's back. I walked instead. They brought us to a cave that would become our home until further notice. Our baskets with the firewood had been set against the wall. Our wrists were unbound. Neither of us considered trying to get away. There were just too many wolves to try and flee. A pair of them stood at the entrance of the cave. A small fire was lit inside. I walked over to get warmed up. Tolka sat next to me. She appeared pale and a bit tired. I was worried she was scared, even though she easily took down a much more frightening monster the other night. I think we're stuck here for the night. I don't know if they'll feed us. Should we eat our lunch now or later? I asked her with my hands out, trying to get warm. It's around dinner time, so I suppose we should. I was shocked so much time passed. No wonder why my head hurt so much. Tolka brought out the small bag with our packed meal. She warmed up the sandwiches by the fire. Somehow she made even simple meals taste better. When she just picked up her sandwich, I started to get more concerned. What's up? I asked her, putting aside my meal. She had her legs tucked under her cape like a blanket. She had been fidgeting in a way I swear I'd seen before. I'm just not feeling well, she said in a small voice. I watched her for another minute. I placed a hand on her forehead, feeling how warm it was. Suddenly it all clicked. Are you I paused, trying to find the right words. Is it the time of the month for you? I'd lowered my voice in case the ones by the entrance of the cave could hear us. She nodded, then leaned against my side. She appeared so much smaller by curling her body inward. I'm surprised you knew. I have a younger sister, so I know a little bit about this stuff. Did you pack any supplies? I said, praying she did. She shook her head and fidgeted even more. I felt horrible for her. I couldn't even imagine how uncomfortable all of this was for her. I didn't have much to help. I took out the bottle of water and a package of tissues from my jacket. Then I took off my coat to strip off my sweater, letting the cool air hit my bare arms. I would be cold in just a t-shirt, but Tolka needed my shirt more. There is a small space in the wall. I'll keep watch. It's not much, but you'll be able to get cleaned up and use my sweater however you want. She thanked me and hurried off. I kept my back turned, keeping an eye on the front of the cave so no one would come inside. After a while, she came back to the fire and curled up on the ground using my leg as a pillow. "I'm sorry I don't have any painkillers," I told her and let her take my hand. "No, this is my fault. Unlike humans, this is not a monthly thing. It only happens every 6 months until I'm fully an adult. When my body is done growing, I'll have to deal with this every 3 months. However, I am the runt of my family. My body may never grow properly." She trailed off and finally shook her head. "I'm normally prepared. This should not have happened so soon. My sister had the same issue. When she was around female coworkers or friends, she got synced up and couldn't predict when it would happen. I often got calls from her because she was stranded in a bathroom somewhere and needed supplies. When you're an older brother with a car, you're expected to do certain favors." Poor Tolka looked miserable. It was good that the wolves outside weren't threatening. The only one of us that could fight was out of commission. "You're a good brother," she said, sounding exhausted. I kept a hand on her shoulder, feeling terrible I couldn't do more for her. Over the years it felt as if I'd only done basic things for my family. Sure, I had been able to provide for them, but that was all. I focused so much on them that I neglected to be close to them. I refused to make the same mistake this time around. "We should ask them if they'll take you back to the mansion to rest," I told her. She shook her head, refusing the idea. "I don't fully trust them. I can't show any weakness. If they come inside for whatever reason, wake me up." She closed her eyes to try and sleep. It was not by choice. I'd seen my sister suffer with cramps. When she was younger, a cyst formed which caused her so much pain she passed out in school. From the looks of things, Tolka might have the same issue. Soon her face grew hot with a fever. She groaned in her sleep from the pain and stayed curled in a tight ball. The sounds of footsteps drew my attention to the entrance of the cave. I needed to get Tolka some help against her wishes. The wolf that walked inside was the female one we had spoken to before. I hoped she understood some of the pain my new sister was going through and had some empathy for her. "I came to see if you two needed a meal," she said, and stopped in front of us. "What's wrong with her?" she asked with a small nod. "Cramps," I answered honestly. Her expression slightly changed. However, I found it hard to understand the emotions on an animal's face. "Can you let her go back to get some real rest? You don't need both of us. In fact, I bet Duke won't even realize we're gone in an empty mansion. If Tolka makes noise, he'll remember that he bought 2 of us and maybe go looking for me." The wolf appeared to consider my request. Since I arrived, Duke didn't appear too concerned about my presence. It was only when I made noise he cared enough to investigate. He was either very forgetful or lazy. The wolf called in the pair that had guarded the entrance of the cave. I felt nervous when she reached down to lift Tolka off the floor and place her on one of their backs. "Take this one back. We have no use for an ill creature," she ordered. The pair was gentle. I heard her weakly protest, but her body refused to follow through. Once they left, the leader sharply smacked my forehead with the back of her hand. "Speak up sooner, stupid boy," she scolded. I wasn't offended by her words. I liked these creatures and I was glad we found out about them. I just wish they hadn't knocked me out to drag us to their little campsite. I wanted to know what she would say to Duke if he did come looking for his failed bed warmer. But she left the cave before we could have a real conversation. Hours passed by with the air growing colder. I kept the fire going. Without it, I would have frozen solid. How many days would I be stuck out here for? The wolves didn't appear to notice the cold. They had fur to keep them warm. I might die out here if they didn't clue in how delicate humans were. I honestly thought the cold would seal my fate. I had no idea what else lurked inside the woods in the dark. Sounds came from outside. Yelling and cries for help echoed throughout the cave. I debated on what I should do. I might just get in the way. I had no weapons on hand, so I just grabbed the sturdiest stick I could find and peeked outside to the campsite to see what was going on. My chest tightened when a body fell from the trees and by the fire. Each limb was long and thin. I could smell the rotten monster from a few feet away. It appeared human enough, only elongated in every way and walking like a crab. It had long greasy hair that had turned black from dirt and grime. When it raised a head to land a pair of milky white eyes in my direction, my skin crawled. Within a flash, it crawled in my direction, weaving between wolves trying to stop it. Even after they stabbed long spears into its back, it still tried to keep coming toward me. I ran out of the cave to stand next to the female wolf that had 2 spears, one in each hand. She threw one hard into the trees. A creature fell from the trees, landing hard with the spear sticking out of its chest. She offered the weapon to me, but it was simply too large for my hands to fully wrap around. "What are these things?" I asked her, my nerves on edge. "Not a clue. We have hunted them before. Never in these numbers," she explained. More of those white eyes shone through the dark branches. It was easy to tell that the wolves were outnumbered. The leader requested a smaller weapon. I needed to pull my weight. She handed me a small dagger, which I found hard to hold with sweating palms. Soon the campsite turned into a war zone. Each wolf was swarmed with 2 or 3 of those long monsters clawing at them. No matter how many they took down, more arrived to take their place. Inhuman cackling ripped through the trees as blood spilled onto the cold ground. The leader was busy with 2 creatures at once when one fell on me. I slipped away from the spider-like fingers, slicing them with my borrowed weapon. I darted in close to bring the blade down into the monster's white eyeball, causing the body to fall limp. The handle of the dagger slipped from my grip when the creature fell. It planned to sacrifice itself to take away my only defense. When another rushed in, I could do nothing to stop it from forcing me to the ground. My eyes watered from the smell and my skin crawled from being so close. Puffs of putrid breath fell over my face, causing bile to rise to the back of my throat. It smiled, showing off rows of uneven needlepoint teeth. It got in close as I thrashed against a steel finger, trying to get away. To my horror, this thing was smelling me. I made eye contact with a pair of dead white eyes, and for a moment, everything fell away. I sank deep in a cold fear that went down to my very soul. These creatures were death itself. Something no human could ever understand. A force of nature we desperately tried to flee from. No matter how much I struggled, my fate had been sealed the moment these things came for my life. Pain tore across my body when it suddenly came down and ripped a set of teeth into my soft flesh. It tore off a piece of my cheek, scratching and tearing the left side of my face. It hurt too much to even scream. Blood rushed down my neck and flowed into the back of my throat. It felt like I would drown in it. With one eye open, I was forced to watch that monster swallow my flesh with a grin. "After I'm done with you, I'll take my time with the cute little kitty cat you were with," it whispered in a scratchy voice. My stomach dropped. Was Tolka all right? She left before nightfall. Surely these things attacked the camp first and she was resting at the mansion. I might be a bit of a pushover when it comes to my well-being. After all, I sold myself to support my family. But like my new sister, I fought like hell when it came to protecting something I treasured. Without any hesitation, I shot my head forward to sink my teeth into this foul creature's neck. No matter how much pain I felt or how much I wanted to throw up, I refused to stop. I bit down hard and tasted rotten thick blood. Within seconds I ripped away parts of flesh, spitting out the pieces, and went back to do more damage. The thing didn't scream. Instead, it laughed until the body fell limp. I couldn't move with the dead weight on my chest. My vision started to go blurry from the blood loss. I should have died there. I heard voices but couldn't make out the words. Before I passed out, I felt the dead body get lifted off my own as someone tried to keep me awake. I felt too dizzy. Everything felt so damn cold. I just wanted to sleep. I'm not sure how long I was asleep. When I opened my eyes, I was inside the mansion again, tucked in my new bed. Something felt heavy across my chest. Tolka had transformed into her large cat body to keep me warm. She was asleep and I didn't want to wake her. But I really need to pee. I slipped out from under her massive paws. My knees buckled when I stood up. I forced through the dizziness and pain to make my way to the washroom. I almost didn't make it. After I was finished, a small knock came to the door. "Are you all right?" Tolka asked on the other side. I opened my mouth to answer her. My throat was so dry I needed to get a drink of water from the tap before I answered her. Yeah, I'm a bit cold. I'm going to have a shower to warm up, I told her. I avoided the mirror the entire time I was in the washroom. The water took a few minutes to warm up. I felt too sick to stand, so instead I sat in the tub letting it full with hot water as the shower ran. There weren't any bandages on my face. The left side hurt and yet there were no scabs. I took my time in the hot water, dreading the fact I would need to see the damage sooner or later. A chill sank deep into my bones the moment I got out of the tub. Even after drying off quickly and adding on layers, I couldn't seem to get warmed up. Carefully I wiped down the foggy mirror to see a slightly fuzzy image of myself. It wasn't as bad as I thought. 5 long deep grooves had been cut into my cheek. One ran over my lip, cutting into it slightly, showing some teeth. I didn't have any issues speaking with the new cut. My mouth just felt extra dry now. Honestly, I was never good looking to start with. The scars added some character. Tolka ambushed me when I opened the bathroom door. I hugged her tightly, feeling terrible I made her worry. I'm sorry. This is my fault. I hate being a girl sometimes. If I was male this never would have happened, she said in a flood of words. I'm male and I got my ass kicked. Sometimes gender has nothing to do with certain outcomes, I said to her. She raised an eyebrow in my response. You're human. No one expects anything from you, she pointed out. That hurt a little. Compared to her, I was weak. I couldn't fight on even terms with monsters unless I had a weapon. Even then I could be taken down by a creature she would consider weak. Are the wolves all right? I asked her after she pulled away. I started digging in some boxes looking for another sweater to put on. It was freezing in here despite the fireplace going. Yes. No issues. Some cuts here and there. It's a shame those creatures are too foul for them to eat. Such a waste of effort. I felt a little embarrassed about how I was so easily overpowered. Since I saw Duke I knew I was around monsters. Somehow it all hadn't fully sunk in until that moment. This place was a completely different world than the one I knew. Nightmares and death were just a part of their everyday life. Did Duke ever talk to them? I felt hungry and wanted to go to the kitchen for a hot meal. Tolka tried to order me to stay in bed, but I felt restless. We walked together down the hallway, getting caught up on what happened when I was asleep. No, I haven't seen him at all. Not even when the doctor was here treating your wounds. Maybe he hasn't been in the mansion? Tolka shrugged. We should. I wasn't paying attention while we walked. We turned a corner only to be face to face with a large suit of dark armor I'd never seen before. Suddenly seeing a figure in front of me caused my brain to react. I jumped back while letting out a sharp, short scream. Tolka paused and waited until I recovered to keep walking. Nacho was playing with things while you were out. I told him to put things back, which he didn't. She explained and pushed the armor closer to the wall. At least she didn't comment on my totally manly reaction. We reached the first floor when another figure met us by the front door. Duke stood almost waiting for us to arrive. His covered eyes landed on me. I felt a chill run down my spine from being under his unseen gaze. Did you change your hair? He commented. It did not sound like he was joking. I sighed, too tired to be offended. We met the wolves out in the forest. They wanted to know why you brought them here. I said, knowing if I didn't ask now, I might not get another chance. The previous leader asked if they could relocate in the forest. It is filled with other creatures they can hunt. A perfect place for them. It seems as if not many of the older ones of the group agreed to leave their land. Unless they were bought and forced to move, a fight may have broken out. Duke explained, again sounding bored. He had done them a favor, but why didn't he ever tell them the reason behind the move? Did he really just bring them here and forget? Or did the old leader of the group not want the people he cared about to know? Who do you have with you? Duke asked, and his question made my brain fully stop for a few seconds. I looked between him and Tolka, wondering if there was anyone else in the room. You bought her shortly after you bought me, remember? I said slowly. The silence between us was deafening. I bought you to clean, right? I suppose you needed help with that, he said almost to himself. I wanted to hit my head against a wall. We were so unimportant to him that he forgot our purpose and even that he bought poor Tolka. She didn't look as if she cared at all. A horrible thought came to my mind. How many times had he done this? Were we really alone in this place? How many creatures were set loose and forgotten out in the forest because of an impulse purchase? I heard Arvin was a failed bed warmer. Tolka added, I loved her but I still glared down at her for bringing that up. Please continue to get along. Scream if you need my assistance. We watched him walk away and disappear into the shadows again. I considered the idea that Duke was just messing with us. I preferred that over him having memory problems. We kept moving to the kitchen. I wanted steak for dinner but we didn't have any. Tolka made a very nice chicken soup instead. She also explained that the wolves agreed to help us collect firewood from now on. Who knew what else lurked in the woods? They all saw me as weak and needed to be protected. I didn't tell Tolka but I was glad for their offer. Any time I closed my eyes I went through seeing that monster eating my flesh. It would take a very long time before that memory faded. I dreaded trying to sleep that night and feared what nightmares would be in my future. For now, I needed to stay distracted and pray that in time the dread that settled in my heart faded.